is presented by Botano. The game starts now. Here are your hosts, Brent Wallace, Jason York, and Bobby Ryan.
Good Monday afternoon, everybody. Brent Wallace alongside the smartest man in hockey, Jason York, who's also the owner of the Ottawa Senators.
Hey, and you're going to Ponderosa. I forgot to talk about you as we did. Well, we like to come on before the show and chat about a few things. Trivia. I had a big trivia question on trivia today on Twitter. And
yes.
The winner is going to Ponderosa for you. We just got to find a Ponderosa that's still open, though. I don't know.
There is some in the U.S.
I think that ship has sailed in Canada.
Maybe it should be Red Lobster.
Oh,
I'm joking because my last time I went to a Red Lobster, my cameraman was ridiculously sick, and so I'm never going back.
So we're not getting. So you're telling me as Red Lobster will not be sponsoring this show?
Well, no. I will take their money if they want, but I don't think they'll be sponsoring. No. Hope everyone had a great weekend, and all the dads had a great Father's Day. I spent it driving back from New Hampshire for an 8-hour car ride, so that was good because I went to a hockey tournament.
Successful? Successful tournament?
No. No. So you know what, Yorkie, you know this. When you go to these the spring teams or summer teams, whatever they're, I mean, we're in June now for crying out loud. You face teams from the U.S. that have been together all year. They're just like traveling teams. So like there are teams that have played like 65 games. We didn't know anybody on our team except for 2 other kids that were from the Ottawa area, and kids from BC and Albertans and all these just mixed up. So you try, but you rarely come away victorious unless you really stack the team.
Is your son a ringer? He's like getting recruited for these teams with kids all over the place. Like, what's going on here? When I did spring hockey with my kids, it was basically friends and family. Just took some friends from the local Canada team, sprinkled in some guys from the PN Ottawa Sting, and voila, there's your spring team. Your kid's a ringer. He's got kids from BC. He's going to Boston. You're all in. Eh?
So, did I tell you the last time? So he played on it. And by the way, he's not a ringer. He did score the shootout winner in one of the games. But
there you go.
He lied to the coach and told him he was good in shootouts. He didn't have one all year. Anyway,
hey.
I give him full marks.
Love it.
So the first game, by the way, Frank Seravalli's waiting out. So we'll get to him. I'll make this quick.
Let's talk about your kids some more. I'm sure everyone wants to know about.
They had like 3 kids from Little Caesars who, if you don't know them, Detroit's like a superpower, it feels like. Little flyer, junior flyer guys. Like one guy flew in on a private jet, and there was one guy, like I felt like the poorest people there. The other guy goes, "Yeah, I'm going to the beach house after the game." And so all the kids are like, "Oh, the beach house." He's like, "What? All my friends have a beach house." Like,
come on.
Settle down.
Who doesn't have a beach house?
I was like, "Oh man." Anyway, enough about me and playing hockey in the middle of summer. Let's bring in Frank Seravalli, shall we? As always, the man himself. Frank, sir, how are you?
You know, I'm good, except you did have a spring/summer tournament a few weeks ago, and you came through Philly, and I never even got a call.
Can we mute his mic?
Hey, Frank. Hey, what's up with that, Frank? Hey, a call, something, Wally.
Hold on. It was called a tournament in Philadelphia. We were in New Jersey.
Same thing.
We were never
it's
close
like going,
to Philadelphia.
It's like going to Gatineau. Like that's what it's like.
We were 35 minutes, and one of the rinks we were 50 minutes away from. Like the only time we saw Philly is on the way out when we stopped, and I took him to the Liberty Bell.
Didn't even call in my area, in my hood.
Were you gonna?
Didn't even nearing.
Listen. I
thought we were teammates, Wally.
We are teammates. I'm apologizing.
Hey, listen, Frank. If I have a rule with guys, it's called the Good Guys Club. Whenever you're in town, a good guy like yourself is there. You make a call. You go out, even if it's just for a coffee, Wally. So you and I got to talk about your priorities here. We'll talk after the show. Poor Frank.
Were you going to come watch the game? No. So I let you
doesn't matter.
Hang out for the weekend and not have to spend it in. I don't even know what the places are called anymore. Can we move on?
No.
We can.
Let's talk about. I want to get right to it, to be honest with you, and that is Alex DeBrincat. It's Jason York's favorite topic. So, Frank, what can you update us on? When do you think this trade's going to happen? Because at this point, it's a trade or nothing, right? Like, he's not playing in Ottawa next year.
I mean, I have a hard time seeing a path for that. Is it possible? Yes. Like, they do have the contractual path to do so. Is it going to be comfortable? No. So I'd imagine that the time frame to make a trade, the clock is ticking on it. You know, the sort of drop dead date will be whenever the arbitration date is, because then that's binding, of course, the contract. But short of that, like, I don't know how pressing it is. Like, I would think that the priority would be, if you're the Sens, to get something done before round 1 next Wednesday. So 9 days from now. But I still think this is a trade that's possible to do after the fact, if the Sens aren't solely focused on draft night capital. If the idea is to get back, you know, a piece lower in the first round, and especially after giving up the pick that you did to get Jakob Chychrun, then perhaps that's your pressure point. The fact of the matter remains that the Sens are not going to get what they gave up last year on draft day for Alex DeBrincat, that number 7 overall pick, and the second and third. That return has sailed now. The point and difficult spot that Pierre Dorion finds himself in is that he now needs to go out and get as much of that as he can, or as close to that as he can, to basically turn around and say, hey, look, we took a swing. We tried to bring in a player that we thought could be a game breaker for us. It's not really our fault that he doesn't want to be here. We're making the push to try and sign this guy to a long-term deal. He's an American. Other teams have been through this before, and we're going to have to cut our losses and go in a different direction. It's really kind of just a matter of when and where, as opposed to if.
Like, we don't have any, like, the arbitration thing really doesn't matter at this point. Is it not just a lever? Like, there's not going to, I would be shocked if this ever got to arbitration, is my point.
I agree with you. And I don't really think there's any real need to go through that unless you haven't gotten to a point where you feel comfortable with the return that you have on the table, and you feel like you have to then go through this arbitration process to keep this player on your team into next season and see where it goes. Is that a possibility? Yes, I think it's a small one, and I would tend to agree with you that I think the Sens are kind of in that spot where it's just a leverage point to retain control.
What are you hearing, Frank, of teams that, I know he has a list, and we've all heard the Detroits. I think a couple other teams are on there as well. So, Dallas is on there. What are you hearing about possible players? Like, because Ottawa's going to need somebody to come back and play, and somebody can be an impact player. Who are some of the names you're hearing out there right now that could possibly be a player coming the other way?
That's sort of the difficult part when you work through this, Jason. Like, you look at the list of guys on these teams. You know, Dallas might be in a different spot, of course, than a team like Detroit, where Detroit is probably in the spot where they're dealing, future assets still. They've got picks 9 and 17 overall, for instance, that they could be moving. I don't see any significant roster pieces coming back the other way from a team like Detroit. And that's sort of the one that everyone's honed in on. Maybe, the Sens get someone like a Philip Zadina who was thought of at one point as a pretty significant prospect and goal scorer, that you could then take him and plug him into your lineup, plus some of the future assets that we were talking about. So when I look at Dallas, like, there's not, or some of the other teams that have been mentioned, there's not really a ton of, obvious sort of, hey, this makes perfect sense. even go through some of the other teams. Like Matt Larkin wrote a great piece on dailyfaceoff.com today looking at some potential destinations for DeBrincat. One of the other teams that really stood out for me that I don't think has been talked about a ton, but is the St. Louis Blues. Like they're another team that has multiple first-round picks. They have 3 total outside of the top 10 and 2 in the 20s that Doug Armstrong has more or less telegraphed to everyone around the league. Hey, we're trying to move these picks in order to get players that fit exactly the age frame that Alex DeBrincat is in. They want 25 and under, guys that can be difference makers moving forward for the St. Louis Blues to bounce back into the playoffs next year. The other teams that he mentioned, Pittsburgh Penguins, could Kyle Dubas make a splash? Could they add someone on the wing to play with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin? The New York Rangers, they've got a hole at right wing with Kane and Tarasenko gone. The Carolina Hurricanes, they're a team that's been one of the most consistently excellent teams in the NHL. 5 consecutive playoff appearances, 4 years out of 5 that they've won at least one round. And
can't score.
So is DeBrincat one of those guys that makes sense? So those are some of the teams that we had put our heads together to try and see where makes sense. And then there's always one that surprises you.
Frank, why I keep hearing Travis Konechny's name out there. Why the hell would Philadelphia trade Travis Konechny? Like that, like, hey, if I'm looking for a guy to come in and be a difference maker, still pretty young, and that name's out there, that's a guy I'm going after. Like, why would they move him?
Well, I think it has to do with timeline more than anything. Like the Flyers are embarking on, if not totally, take it down to the wood like the Chicago Blackhawks have, it's going to be really close to that. And so all of a sudden you begin to kind of do the math. Like Travis Konechny, he had a great year this year. When you look at him, and to your point, he's got a lot of different attributes that he brings. And I kind of view him when he's on as like a Brad Marchand light. He's kind of in your face and has the top end talent to really be a difference maker. But he's also 26. And if you're thinking the Flyers are going to need 5 to 6 years to really turn this around, the best time to trade Travis Konechny is right now while he has 2 years left at $5.5 million and surplus value on his deal. So you wait any longer, and I think you start to run into the, then we need to pay this guy. All of a sudden, the conversation becomes different for teams that are looking to acquire Konechny. And that's why, to me, it stands out as something that I get what you're saying. Why would a team, want to move someone like him? But at the same time, you have to stay true to what exactly you're trying to tackle. And I think that's what the Flyers are thinking.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I do like to point out, I find this very entertaining. In the article, one of the teams Matt Larkin has wrote about is the Pittsburgh Penguins. And of course, that's Kyle Dubas now in charge. And we know that Dubas likes to always acquire Ottawa Senator players. So I just find the entertainment value in this alone. There is a couple of questions, Frank, in the chat about Florida, which is on the list of the 6 teams. Sam Reinhart possibility, but I can't see that. I mean, he makes $6.5 million next season. Then he's a UFA. Is that a trade possibility?
Well, I do think the Panthers have some questions to ask themselves about. Think back to 1 year ago at this exact point in time. Jonathan Huberdeau was entering the last year of his deal. Mackenzie Weegar, same thing, due significant raises. They got out ahead of it and said, we're probably not going to be paying this guy to stay with us long term. Let's make the tough decision now and let's move on from those players. And that's kind of the thought process, I think, when it comes to the Panthers. Same thing with Reinhart, and Sam Bennett has one additional year, but some of these guys are reaching the point where they're going to have to pay them significant money. And Reinhart is really going to be one of those guys. To me, I love his game. Like, you can pencil him in every season for 30 and 30. That's a unique quality in today's game. And I thought when you looked at his playoff run and the Panthers playoff run, he was a big driving force in that, one of the real engines for that team, plays with an edge. and someone that has the skill and a bit of a frame to be able to back it up. So I like Reinhart a lot. I think Florida, they've got a tough choice to make. If they're in the mix for someone like a DeBrincat, and I look at Florida and I say that's a team that's pretty well positioned down the middle, could they possibly find an upgrade there in a DeBrincat? And you could start to see that make sense.
How about that conversation with Matthew Tkachuk and DeBrincat? Yes, sorry about blowing you up there late in the season. You remember that hit, Frank?
Yeah. And hey, look, I'm sure there could have been a message sent too from Matthew to Brady, maybe along the way.
Exactly, man. That was a big hit.
So, by the way, I just looked it up. If those who haven't, DeBrincat, since he's joined the league in 2017-18, has the 4th most goals of players 25 years or younger. He is extremely talented, and I think we need to make sure we continue to point this out, because we like to always just say, well, he doesn't want to be here and he's got to go and all, but he's a very, very good player.
Mm-hmm.
But Frank,
but also fair to say that he probably didn't meet expectations last season, right?
Fair. No, without question. And we've discussed this on the show. I feel like every show, he doesn't fit, I don't think, what Ottawa needs right now. They have plenty of offensive threats. I just think they need somebody different in that role. And Yorkie's been the same way. My concern is Ottawa is not going to recoup what it gave up to get him, because of he's only got 1 year. He wants to be relocated, which I think is a family decision. I don't necessarily think this is just all on Alex DeBrincat.
Well, I think it's very similar to the same thing that Chicago was facing a year ago. They were saying, let's get ahead of it now, because it's never going to be as good as it is right at this exact moment, because teams are now staring down the same thing that Ottawa is, which is, it's great that we have to trade something to get this guy, but then we also need to pay him. And how expensive is that long-term deal? It's a number that at the bare minimum starts with an 8 based on exactly the type of stat that you just pointed out. Yeah. It's the goal scoring touch. Even though he didn't score the goals necessary last year to really sort of vault him into that category, the big question that was looming with Alex DeBrincat after hitting 40 goals twice was, can he do it without Patrick Kane? And so he goes somewhere else and then puts up a pretty good season, which everyone's like, yeah, this guy's still a pretty good player. That's something that all has to be kept in mind. It's the paying him now somewhere else that's going to get in the way of the return.
Frank, that Carolina comment you made makes, because you look at what troubled them during the playoffs. They just can't score. And listen, goal scoring, you still got to pay for it, right? And there's just so many guys in the league can do it at a consistent rate. If an off year for you is 29, that's still not too bad. Mm-hmm. So I think they'll find a dance partner because there's so much pressure to score goals, and he's still one of the best. Still one of the best at it.
Yeah, and I was thinking back as we went through this exercise today. Matt Larkin and I were trading messages. I was looking at a whole bunch of teams. I was saying, it might be hard to do this in division with a team like Buffalo, and I guess the same thing exists with Detroit. But I was saying, Buffalo, for instance, that could make perfect sense. You've got the pillars down the middle that your teams build on. You could use a scoring winger, and I'm like, but they already kind of have an undersized guy in Jeff Skinner that already makes a boatload of money, that maybe they don't need another Jeff Skinner. So that's the only thing that kind of concerns me about DeBrincat when it comes to some other teams, including Carolina. Carolina is not a massive team up front.
No.
Does DeBrincat really fit? Sebastian Aho, not a huge guy. Jordan Staal, who'll likely be back, and I'd expect to sign in the next few days. He's got some, but they're not teaming with, trees in their lineup. They've got some size on their back end, but they're not huge up front. And I just don't know if I think here's really the crux of the DeBrincat debate and issue for front offices is he a driver or is he a great complementary piece? And I tend to think more towards the latter. And you need those to win. The question is, how many of those guys can you afford to pay sort of top level money?
Yeah. If you look at prime Phil Kessel, Prime Phil Kessel was scoring mid 30 goals, but he's not a guy that's going to lead your team. You put him on a really good team like Pittsburgh, and he's going to be a great complimentary piece for you and help you win a Stanley Cup. So yeah, and I still think Detroit. I know you said Detroit as well, and Wally and I and Bobby, we've been talking about Detroit now for 5 months. Like, they could really use, and he's not that old. Like, he could be a piece that grows with that core. And
that's what the Sens wanted in him, frankly. They wanted him to grow with their core. Exactly.
And that's why that and helped sell a lot of tickets last summer. But it's just, hey, when the guy doesn't want to be here, you got to do what you got to do.
So if last summer was the summer of Pierre, what is this summer?
That's a great question.
I'm not even going there.
Come on, Wally.
It's the summer of Andlauer. No, it's, you know what it is? Unfortunately, it's been the great pause, and everything is just on pause. Like, we had to wait and sit through, get to an owner, and now you feel like there's not a lot that they can do because they got to wait to sign paperwork, and then he's got to come in and
trust me. Frank, listen, they're not like, there's conversation. I'll get your opinion on this. Yes, Michael Andlauer is not getting control of the team till whenever, a month, 2 months, who knows when it is. But there would be conversations going on daily. If I'm putting myself in the general manager's shoes right now, you are going to be reaching out for sure, because this is the guy that's going to be owning the team, and you're going to want to make sure this guy's happy. So 100% he's going to have say on what's going on.
Yeah, it's sort of the advisor role, if that makes any sense, at least for the time being. And I think that's also kind of what makes the entire thing uncomfortable, because you have someone that you know is taking over, but in the meantime, you also have someone that has their hands on the wheel steering the ship, who frankly may not be that person that's selected to continue steering the ship when it comes to September or whenever it is that Michael Andlauer has finally handed the keys to the franchise. And so, we haven't really seen it before where someone is able to take operational control of the franchise. I think it happened a long time ago in the mid 90s with John Spano and the New York Islanders. He was able to wrestle control of the team and had it without actually making any payments. And the NHL had to go back and sort of undo and erase some of the things that he had done. They're really careful this time around, not to say that there's any hiccups coming, but it's pretty rare to have someone that's making some functional organizational decisions without actually having full and complete control of the franchise. So it's a really tough, you said the summer of pause. Like, I'm going to call it the summer of mystery, because no one really knows what to expect next and how active, are the Sens going to be in the meantime.
One of the discussions I'm having right now in the chat is people don't ever trade within the division. Don't trade to Detroit. Don't trade to Boston or Montreal, all that stuff. But I don't believe that to be the case anymore. Like, it used to be back in the day, absolutely. I just find now and I'm about to say, even look at Tyler Bertuzzi going to Boston from Detroit. If Alex DeBrincat is the reason that you don't make the playoffs, I think you got bigger issues in your roster than one player, is my point.
I'll agree with you and disagree. On the one hand, I think that's always actually been a staple of Pierre Dorion's tenure. Just go back to, it was the Mike Hoffman trade, right? He went from San Jose and then they flipped him to Florida.
Yep.
Like, part of the reason for that was Ottawa didn't deal in division with Florida. And so that's actually how that deal came to be. They were really none the wiser the whole time that San Jose was cooking it up to send him somewhere else.
Right.
So on the one hand, that's sort of been Pierre Dorion's MO. And on the other, I think the rule doesn't really apply as much when it comes to pending UFAs. Like, I think Detroit was looking at the Bertuzzi situation saying, well, first off, we're not making the playoffs anyway. And second, he's going to a team that more or less can't really afford to keep him unless they make other significant moves. So I'd say in season, that seems to apply less. than perhaps a trade that happens in the offseason where you're sort of directly helping another team in your division build.
But you can get perhaps a better return. You can squeeze Detroit if you're like, I'm not trading to you unless you sweeten this pot.
I agree with you. I'm just telling you how other teams think about it. I would trade with anyone at any point in time if the deal's right.
Exactly.
And I think you throw everything out the window and take the best deal for your franchise. I'm just saying that's not how everyone looks at it.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I think it's one thing too when you're trading a player that quote unquote drags his teammates into the battle. Like, hey, if you're, let's say, world behold here, you trade Brady Tkachuk. Maybe that's not a guy you want to trade within your division, or a Matthew Tkachuk, but those players are few and far between.
Agreed, and that's why more often than not, those players go to the other conference. In fact, not even in the same division.
Get them as far away as possible.
Yeah. And geographically, Calgary to Florida is almost as far away as possible.
That seemed to work out pretty well for Florida. Frank, we have a bit of business to take care of. If you would just allow me to do some work.
You do them all here, Wally.
This show, as always, proudly presented by Betano. Go to betano.ca, where the game starts now. Visit Betano or download the award-winning state-of-the-art app, the fastest, most user-friendly, and advanced betting app for your mobile or tablet. Have the amazing world of sports with you at Betano. Hundreds of betting options, and try the same game parlays with Bet Builder. Also, in-game live betting and the most competitive odds in the market. Betano, the game starts now. All right, Yorkie, I will do it. As always, this show held together by Renfrew Pro Tape. Go to renfrewpro.com. 10% off your first order. You can also order tape right from the website, or also you can get it online. But when I was in New Hampshire, we had to stop at the store and get some Renfrew Pro Tape. It is moisture resistant, helps with puck control, and it's what the pros use. Even Yorkie, available at all major retailers. renfrewpro.com, the one with the green core. Also, don't forget Free Tape Friday. Just tag your teammates and get unlimited entries. Also, BEI, Bonnechere Excavating Inc. They, for 35 years, have put their reputation on the line, providing great service and unmatched quality of work. And now they're putting forth the same commitment to build you a new home. Escape the city and the big city price tags. Relocate to Wren subdivision, built by BEI Homes, just an hour west of Canada. You can enjoy a vibrant, small-town atmosphere with all the modern conveniences. Detached, semi-detached homes, 70-foot frontage with water and sewer. Also, semi-detached, plenty of upgrades, starting as low as $500,000. Visit BonnechereHomes.com. There. All right. I want to move on to ownership and what. So we're in the middle of it here. Yorkie even more so because he's now one of the owners. Yorkie, I'm going to say this every show, by the way, just because people all think that you are leaving and you've got your office picked out.
I'll run with it.
To Michael Andlauer.
Yeah, there you go.
So anyway, Frank, what do you see on the outside of things of how this is shaping up and what Michael Andlauer's reputation is outside of Ottawa?
I think it's like quite literally sterling. He has built for himself, not just as a self-made man, but also as a true, this guy lives, eats, breathes, sleeps hockey, a beer league goalie that can't get enough. That sort of rings true in every facet. And, I think part of it too is attention to detail. Like, he's someone that always has, I've been going to Board of Governors meetings for, 10 years now. And
we did our first one together.
Yeah. So you see him there, and like he's had a seat at the table for a long time now with the Montreal Canadiens, that there's a trust factor that exists between the NHL and now the Andlauer group that I think is incredibly important. I think it's the reason why his bid ended up being the winner. You have to go into business with someone that you trust. And I think that factor is mutual. He's a known commodity to the NHL. They know what they're getting. They also know generally how he steers his ship, which has been very detail oriented. Nothing is left to chance. There are no questions, attention to detail, all those things that come into play. And so his reputation is fantastic. And I think the enthusiasm that he has for the sport it's so needed, I think, in the market. Like, you really saw the feel and vibes around the Sens change last season. And the fact now that they have a new owner who can pour some capital in, make things right, kind of right from the start, and tackle this long-standing arena issue, I honestly believe, and the reason why the Sens price tag was so high is because it's only going up from here for the Sens, that I think it's an incredibly exciting time to be a Sens fan. Not only do you have this, this roster that's on the precipice of, the playoffs and knocking on that door, but also to have the backing behind it. You look at all the great teams in the NHL, you don't really make it there without good ownership. The Tampa Bay Lightning don't win 2 Stanley Cups if Jeff Vinik doesn't buy the team in 2010 and give them every resource imaginable. And mostly to the point, stay out of the way. You have to have someone that, having a passion for hockey is great, but let the people that actually, live and breathe the hockey operations do that on a daily basis and sit back and enjoy it as a fan. So that, I think, is a huge part of the key moving forward.
And I think that's key, right? Like, we don't see Bill Foley. You don't see Jeff Vinik. You don't see the owners who are really successful out front very often, unless they need to quickly open a practice facility or something ridiculous. But typically, you don't see them. And I think that is key of remaining behind the scenes and doing the job and just being the owner, if that makes sense.
Well, that
makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.
Yeah, and I was going to say not to dance on Eugene Melnick's grave, which no one would do. It's just that you heard the stories time and time again of how involved in the process he was, not just in everything that went on hockey ops, but every little detail of that team behind the scenes. There wasn't someone, there was always someone overseeing that and looking at it and breathing all over it. That, I think, to have everyone, to give them the flexibility and freedom to do what they need, I think is critically important to the job.
So there's so many rumors, and it's in the chat right now with a few people talking about Alfie's going to have a job with the Ottawa Senators. I don't think there's any question about that. The question is, what's he going to do? Do you have any feeling of what happens with Daniel Alfredsson? I think he should be president of the organization and not president of hockey ops, but that's just me.
I don't have a sense. I've, like you and like everyone in the chat, I've heard the rumblings. I've heard people talk about Daniel Alfredsson having a bigger role. I think in some ways it's been a long time coming, and in an odd way, I kind of view Daniel Alfredsson to the same as what Shane Doan was in Arizona, if that makes any sense. Sort of in again, out again, deeply wants to be involved, but for whatever reason could never get on the same page as ownership. And sometimes that meant being out of the mix for a bit. And to sort of establish that relationship, bring the, sort of native son, the prodigal son back home, I think is incredibly important from a fan base perspective. You want to be on the same page as your franchise icons. You want to have a shared belief and opinion. And you have someone in Daniel Alfredsson that wants to put the time in and wants to work, which is the other part of the superstar equation that not everyone buys into. So I tend to view it the same sort of way you do. And maybe it's not as president right away. Maybe it's something like senior advisor to the team or whatever it is. But I think everyone can agree that having Daniel Alfredsson back in the fold sure beats the alternative.
Without question. I just remember him at center ice doing the face-off and the fan reaction to seeing Daniel Alfredsson, right? It was just, you can't buy that. And that's so as we always talk hockey or professional sports, it's about emotion, right? Like, I am investing in an organization because that's where my heart is at. And it's always about emotion, and people feel that connection to Daniel Alfredsson. Anyway, and there's lots of others, Chris Phillips, Chris Neal. There's lots of great players that have played here. The Patrick Waugh rumor talk is interesting to me. Do you think he's going to be a potential head coach of the Ottawa Senators?
I don't. I think the connection that was made between Patrick Waugh and some of the potential bidders that were up for the Sens, I think it was with a different group other than the Andlauer group, and I can confirm 100% that there was indeed one of the groups had reached out to Patrick Waugh to gauge his interest and to engage in that conversation. I don't know what's going to happen with the coaching front. My sense and the rumor or rumbling the whole time was that, if Michael Andlauer gets the team, you had heard the talk all along about Steve Staios, and we still don't know what's to come of that. This adds to the awkwardness of this summer of mystery. But then because of Michael Andlauer's connections to the OHL, there seemed to be some line of thought or thinking that if he does get the team, that DJ Smith will then be safe. Again, your guess is as good as mine in terms of what direction they're going to go down. And then timeline is yet another question after that. Here's all I can say, and I think this is what ties into the coaching staff is I don't care if it's Toe Blake or Scotty Bowman or DJ Smith or Patrick Waugh. It doesn't matter who it is. This team needs to hit the ground running in October right from puck drop. There can be no 6-12-1 start again, because I remember getting to, March, April, and there was one weekend this past season, in the springtime where the Sens are trying to scratch and claw to get in. And someone asked me the question, did losing both games this weekend sink the Sens season? And my answer was no. The Sens season was over in mid-November when they started 6-12-1. It's so difficult in this league to get out of that hole. And me personally, watching this team go through that, the last few years in a row, DJ Smith, to me, I don't have any questions about his credentials as a coach. And I don't know if it all comes down to him. But having this team ready from the start and to have that fall apart year after year, it's unforgivable in my opinion. And that's the big thing that needs to change, regardless whoever is the coach or the GM.
What's your ideal GM for the Ottawa Senators?
That is a very loaded question. There's a lot to think about and tackle there. And my biggest thing is when I think about the Sens, and this is going to be an overarching thought, is they have a lot of the critical core pieces in place already. You look at the back end with Sanderson and Shabbat and now Chychrun, and you look at the forward group and the incredibly talented group of players that they have with Stützle and also Brady and the whole group. Like, you're like, man, they have a lot of elements. A lot of the positional boxes have already been checked. Solving the goaltending is one. And then I think finding someone that can find the right complementary pieces. The drafting and development part, it hasn't been a 100% success rate, but it's actually been pretty damn good. And that is a nice feather in the cap of Pierre Dorion in terms of having a chance to remain as this team's manager moving forward, as he can point to his track record and say, here are all the guys that I've put into place for your team. Now let me be the guy that helps put this team over the hump. The thing is, he's also tried to do that last summer and wasn't successful. I think Claude Giroux, someone that came in and exceeded expectations. Alex DeBrincat, a lot was given up for him. We talked about him and we're like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. So you need someone that is going to win on the margins for the Ottawa Senators, someone that is going to take a bunch of 3% and 5% wins and stack those up until you can have a team that is ready to compete with some of the big boys in the Atlantic Division. So that to me is the game plan. That's the blueprint. That's the angle of attack for the Sens. And whether that's Pierre Dorion or whether it's someone else that's out there, a Steve Staios or someone that Michael Andlauer has in mind, that remains to be seen.
I'm going with Jason York for GM. As Frank, we appreciate your time. Yes. Yes.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Thanks, Frank. That was great stuff.
You can watch Frank daily, dailyfaceoff.com. Also, one of the best insiders there is in the entire game. We appreciate your time and look forward to maybe having some more chats. And if I come to Philly, I'm calling.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see.
Remember my number. It's stored in your phone somewhere, I think. So, have a good one, guys.
Take care. There goes Frank Seravalli.
See you, Frank.
One of the best. Yeah.
So this is so just to feed off what Frank was saying, and I've said this now for, I think I was saying it since Christmas time. The Senators are a lot closer than people outside of the bubble that cover this team on a daily basis. I think they're 2 years away from challenging for a Stanley Cup. I think they're that close.
Really?
And I think this summer is vital. Yes, really. Look at the defense core. Look at your top 6 forwards. This DeBrincat scenario is vital to me. Like, if you could plug in a good top 6, it doesn't have to be a 40 or a 30 goal scorer. It's a guy that can score just over 20, but play with some vigor and some sandpaper that's going to, if anybody who's listening watched the Stanley Cup, you know the type of player I'm talking about. A guy that plays when it is hard out there, that gets into what I call plays inside the dots.
I got a guy
inside, for you. And then another. I still would bring in another defenseman, and you got to solve the goaltending. So, and you also need to upgrade the bottom 6. So there's some work to be done. There's time to do it, and I think with this, DeBrincat is a huge chip to play to really help this process and speed it along quickly.
All right. So, as you know, lots of factors involved. I remember back in the early 2000s, every year they started out by saying, Ottawa is going to win the Stanley Cup this year. Ottawa's winning the Stanley Cup. There's too many factors involved for we to go 2 years down the road, this team's going to challenge for a Stanley Cup. You don't have a goaltender. You do not have a goaltender that's going to win you a Stanley Cup right now. Until you find one, I don't even know that this should be a question that's entertained at the moment.
But to play devil's advocate, like, you just don't know with the goaltending situation. Like, did anybody think Adin Hill was going to lead? And I know people are saying, well, yeah, they signed him. That's why they signed him. Well, they signed him and they gave him $2 million. Like, this was a very good insurance policy, and they obviously did their homework on him, but he wasn't a guy when they thought this guy's going to win us the Stanley Cup. He's a capable goaltender and played great.
I agree. But you're saying right now you have no issues of Anton Forsberg leading this team to a Stanley Cup at the moment. You think he's capable of doing that?
I think Ottawa's pro scouting department really needs to dig up their sleeves, and this summer scour that free agent market. Maybe in the DeBrincat trade, maybe you can bring a goaltender back the other way that fits into with the age, and a guy it doesn't have to be. My point is, it doesn't have to be a star.
I know, I get it.
And you can win this. You can win. Yeah, especially now. You don't need a $7 and $8 million goaltender. You don't. You need somebody that is a very good goaltender, mentally tough, and that's where your pro scouting department comes in. You got to go out there, and find that guy.
But Ottawa doesn't have that guy, in my opinion.
I don't think they do either. Who knows? And that's why I'm saying 2 years from now. Like, I think this year, the way it's going to play out, whoever they start the season with, you never know that he might come along this year. Maybe Forsberg comes back healthy because he's got the both knees, but by all accounts, it sounds like he will. Who knows what he can do? Who knows if they do go with Sogar, how he plays? Who knows who they bring back in the trade? It's just, there's a lot of variables, but I just think they're close with a couple little tweaks, and they've got that great card in DeBrincat right now. They just gotta make the right trade.
I agree. It's just there's so many variables. There's basically 25 variables, and that's 25 players.
But it comes back to me.
Injuries.
Yeah, obviously injuries, luck, all that stuff comes into account. But I'm just basing it on the age of the core, the age of your defense, how this team plays. They're a hard team to play against, and where I see them in a couple of years. Sure, they might. I'm just saying that's what I'm projecting. And also, too, you now have great ownership coming in that's going to spend money, that's not going to handcuff you at the trade deadline, that's not going to want to ship your best players out. Like, it's going to be totally different now. So that's why I think it's sooner than later. And I think it's a 2-year window.
Okay. Here's one of the players I have in mind.
Yeah. Who you got?
I do. And by the way, Tyler Bertuzzi is my first choice at any point to put in that roster. Yeah. I just love the way he plays the game. You know, he's going to battle for everything. You've got Josh Norris and possibly Claude Giroux or Drake Batherson who can score goals on that line. He just creates space. But I'm Yorkie. This is probably going to take some heat. I'm okay. I would put Tom Wilson in that lineup.
It'd be great. Why would Tom Wilson draw you some heat?
Well, people just like we're going to go from Alex DeBrincat to Tom Wilson. And I'm like, if you want to win Stanley Cup, you need someone like Tom Wilson in your lineup. And you have it in Brady Tkachuk. I get it. Like, don't get me wrong. I just want you to add someone else.
Do you know how petrified the other team's defense would be doing? Like, you're going to go, it's basically the puck's chipped in. You see Tom Wilson, you are slowing down and you're letting him get the puck. Like, you're going to get possession every single time. I'm trying to think right now. What's Wilson's age right now? I don't have it in front of me.
29.
Okay, so he's a little older, but not that old.
But he's fine. Like, Claude Giroux's 35. He played like he was 25. 29, Yorkie. Think about it. It's nothing.
No, I know it's not that old. Like, that's why when I hear a name like Travis Konechny, it gets me excited. When you look at guys around that age, he's a hard guy to play against too. Man, I love that guy on my team.
Listen, Josh Norris or Tim Stützle will play 10 feet tall if Tom Wilson is lining up at the faceoff circle with them.
Not disagreeing with you. But you're taking Tom Wilson over Travis Konechny?
Absolutely.
Whoa. I'm taking Konechny. I don't
need the goal scoring
all day. He does a lot of other things too. Plays a hard game, and he's a talented guy that plays the game hard. And I like Tom Wilson a lot, but I'm taking Konechny.
Tom Wilson, you can plug and play anywhere. They're not even close to the same type of player.
I know it's taboo to talk about Farmington right now, but man, you look at where he was projecting as a player and what he can do for you with his speed. I just hope that gets sorted out for all parties involved. But that's the type of player you want on your third line.
I believe Alex Formenton gets mentioned in our chat probably every show when we do a live show. Here's the only thing I'm going to say about this because I don't know for sure.
Neither do I.
I don't believe Alex Formenton will play for the Ottawa Senators ever again. And the only reason I say that is because he just had a year off. Everybody else kept playing. He was not signed, and I believe that is the reason. If the investigation comes out, I think that's what's going to end up happening. I just don't think Alex Formenton will ever be an Ottawa Senator. That's all and I don't have any info to base it on. I'm just basing it on how this all played out this offseason. This was not a contract issue at all.
I would agree with that, but I don't know for sure what's going to happen either. I'm just saying that type of player, that age, that speed, that type of guy is, man, that's your third line winger that can make a difference and is young. So those guys are tough to find. And Tom Wilson for sure. He's had some injury issues too, though. Wally, don't forget, like he's last little while had some injuries, had some issues. Like he's got some hard miles on him. He's got a lot of hard miles on that body. Every time you blow a guy up like Tom Wilson does, it hurts you too when you hit that hard. Trust me. So that would be my other concern with Wilson as well.
Yorkie, I just need him for 1 year to win a Stanley Cup. Okay, I'm not asking for his entire life. I just want 1 year.
So by the time Ottawa, my projection 2 years from now, Wilson is roughly 31. So you like a 31-year-old Tom Wilson? Because you're going to have to pay him a lot, right? You have to pay him a lot of money.
Well, right now he's at 5.1 heading into UFA. He played 33 games last season. He had 13 goals, 22 points.
What was the injury? Well, did you know? I know I put you on the spot.
I'll look it up here first. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'm just saying, guys that play that style, your body you're 21, you're 29, but your body is 59. It's a lot of hard miles, man, to play that style of game.
I don't argue that. I'm just saying, I just need you. Look, Mark Stone. Apparently his back is messed up completely. I just need him to be like that.
Yeah.
Just come into the playoffs and tear everybody apart. A torn ACL. He missed 48 games and then he missed.
Now you're telling me you want Wilson fresh off a torn ACL, turning 30, over Travis Konechny. That's your.
I don't know how. Yes. How else do I need to say this to you? Put Tom Wilson in my lineup. I don't know how else I can say it.
Torn ACL, 31, pretty soon. Jesus.
I'm not asking him to have a breakaway every game, Yorkie.
What are you smoking over there?
Oh my God. We need a summer break.
That's what you and I do. We disagree well.
Yes. Do I like Travis Konechny? Yes. I just want Tom Wilson. Okay. I want Tyler Bertuzzi, and then we'll go from there.
You're the guy that loves D that cross-check guys in front of the net too. Remember that? The Sens need a guy that can knock some bodies down in front of the net. Yes. Cross-check some guys. Let them know you're there.
I believe that's, if you look at the way that the Vegas Golden Knights played, I think they played a pretty hard brand of hockey.
I would agree with you there. Loved their D. And you look at their D, all big, long guys that can move the puck. They didn't get enough credit for, I know people started talking about it later on in the playoffs, but, their third pairing, you look at White Cloud and that third pairing,
yes.
And the thing is, yeah, they're great in front of the net, but those guys move the puck as well. I thought they were tremendous moving the puck, playing simple. And all three pairs played. I believe White Cloud was up around 18 minutes. So it's a big reason why they won the cup.
I agree with you completely. All right. I just want to ask you as a player, I'm not a medical doctor by any stretch of the imagination, nor am I good at the Google machine. Matthew Tkachuk's fractured sternum. Mm-hmm. I get, like, as we talked about, my kid plays hockey. I understand the mentality of wanting to be in the lineup. That just seems excessive to me.
It does. And a fractured sternum, well, it's very difficult to play. I'll tell you a story. It wasn't my sternum, but I got hit from behind and my top rib popped out just on the top of my chest here. I still have a lump and it was like somebody had stabbed me. It was crazy. It took about 2-3 months to finally feel good. Also, another time my one of my ribs in my rib cage got dislocated and it was crazy. Like, there was no way you could play. So I could only imagine the pain that Matthew Tkachuk was dealing with. He finished that one game on adrenaline, but what can you say about him, right? The way he played, and deep inside, like, he's got that never give up, that drive. Okay. He probably felt that I need to play. I've been the guy that's dragging everybody into the fight, and he just. I get it. I totally get it. But, that's why I ended up not playing. I couldn't believe when they announced it, there was actually a fractured sternum, because that is nuts. Yes. I know about the separated shoulders and that kind of thing. This is a whole other level to me. Oh, for sure. For sure. No, I was shocked when that came out, but he'll recover. He'll be fine. It's just going to take a while. Ah, man. All right, I'll throw this last one in, and I keep meaning to mention this in the shows. What's that? Erik Karlsson gets talked about a lot. Oh, love Carl, one of my favorite all-time players, by the way. Yes, but I don't think the fit is Ottawa. Well, who's saying that? There's lots of people talking about Erik Karlsson. He's on the trade block right now. I meant to mention this to Frank. I forgot. I should really write some notes occasionally. He's a trade target, if you will. So not for Ottawa, just he's on the market. Yeah. Are you asking me if he's a fit in Ottawa, or? Yes. Would you put Erik Karlsson
in the lineup with his, I don't know what the contract would be because there's no way we're bringing him here for $10 million.
if maybe San Jose picks up some of the money in the contract, that's a tough loaded question for me too, because one of my all-time favorite players, he is adored by the fan base here. He's coming fresh off. How many points did he have? 100 and was it 100 on the nose? 100 or just over 100. Yeah, I look at what Ottawa does right now. They've got Chychrun, Chabot, Sanderson, all guys. They're not Erik Karlsson. They're not going to produce the offense that Erik Karlsson does. But to me, you have enough offensive guys right now. I think if you were even considering that, you'd probably have to move one of those guys. Maybe you move Chabot. If Chabot wasn't on the team, I say, yeah, it makes sense. But Chabot's on the team right now. So to me, it doesn't make sense.
It's a heavy price to well, okay. Here, let me if they were to eat half his contract and you paid him $5 million a year, are you going to put Erik Karlsson in your lineup?
Man, for $5 million, he looks so good on your team.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and there's an old saying in hockey too: when you have the puck all the time, you don't have to play as much defense because you have the puck. Yeah, $5 million. I love him as a player. Would I want him on the Sens? For sure, I would. I'm just trying to think where all the minutes go and the makeup of the defense core, because like I just said earlier, it's really important what type of defenseman you have in your third pairing. That's why Vegas was so good. They had the perfect third pair. Bigger guys that could play heavy, but also guys that can move the puck. So, yeah, $5 million, sure, I'll take him. I don't think you get him for $5 million. I don't think San Jose is going to eat that much of his contract. There's not a chance they're going to eat $5 million.
He's too old for you because he's 33. So under
your
rigid rules, he can't play on the Ottawa Senators.
Well, he's not coming off a torn ACL, Wally. Like, okay, Karlsson off a torn ACL. Sure, I'll bring him in. I know. I'll give you a break though, because you didn't know before you made that comment that it was a torn ACL on Tom.
Fair.
Wilson.
I would still take him. I don't care.
You're not taking him. You're not coming off a torn ACL and getting signed for.
By the way, Senator has figured it all out that Karlsson will play the wing. So
there's your winger to replace Alex DeBrincat. Put Karlsson.
It's all figured out now.
It's just such a nostalgic question when you think of Karlsson and what he did, that playoff run, playing on one leg. It's just. Yeah, it's tough. I don't even know if he's going to get moved, Wally. Like that's a tough contract to move at the age he's at, what he's doing in San Jose.
Yep.
So I don't even know if he gets moved.
And by the way, could you imagine what this roster would look like if your third line, even right now, consisted of Alex Formenton and Connor Brown in between Shane Pinto, or with Shane Pinto in the middle?
Nick Paul, you mean? Nick Paul in the middle and Connor Brown and Formenton. That'd be a pretty good third line, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It'd be a great third line.
I think Connor Brown was undervalued a lot.
Big time. I listen, the coaching staff, this is how you tell a player's value. Who led the team in ice time all the time?
Yes.
It was Connor Brown.
Yep. Out for all situations.
So he wasn't undervalued. What'd they get for him? Was it a second rounder or a third rounder?
Second.
Yeah. Well, not enough, but you win some, you lose some, right?
That's right. That's how it all plays out.
That was a loss.
We go from the cat to the big dog.
Meaning?
I was going to use it for Connor Brown, the big dog, but
he's the big dog. Is that his name? The big dog?
No, I don't know what his name is. Can we? Never mind. I miss Bobby. By the way, Bobby's trying to sell houses and relocate and move houses. So he's just taking some time off. He's too busy for us, basically. You know what retired life is like. So we will be back later this week. Just you and I and someone else I can find who wants to come on the show.
Leave it with me. I'll get somebody.
Yeah, I'll get back to you. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. We appreciate it. We will see you next time. See you, Yorkie. Enjoy the golf.
Yeah, see you, Wally. See you, everybody.
Coming in Hot is brought to you by Botano.ca. Please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel to never miss an episode.